Just so you all know, this podium, nobody told me yet, the podium says, you'll do great. This is a positive podium.
Most of the podiums in the school have a note of that nature on them.
I've actually noticed positive messages situated in a number of places here. That seems great. Every time I go to pee, I get a positive. So I decided I don't usually get nervous, but I decided to make myself a little nervous. Not that I'm probably going to stay nervous, but I thought I would start nervous. I feel like part of teaching is to perpetually be a student, to perpetually place yourself in the place of the student, and to never fool yourself that you are beyond the place of the student. And part of the way I've been doing that as a writer is to start again, check again what I'm doing, and part of what I've been fascinated, I mean there's a danger to this, but there's also promise in it, is to get more fascinated by the process, become more open to the process, become more vulnerable to the process, and what that has ended up meaning today is to share directly from the process, i.e. to share something that is, in a certain sense, incomplete, or handwritten, or a draft, or something like that, but that doesn't know where it's going. So, as a lot of you know, one of my main things is translation, but I wanted to avoid the place of translation that delivers the finished translation, and to give something from, let's say, farther back or deeper within the process, where the translation, in fact, arises in my work. So the thing I've been doing, at least recently, is I make these day books. This is an example. They're little folders. Stray sheets get written every day, which could be like a diary. It could be like a commonplace book where I write down quotes from things I like. It's also where notes go. It's also where this kind of all-purpose category that in Spanish we call quehaceres, this shit you got to do, lists of things to do, it all lands there. And I've found that compiling these is actually gives me the full 3, or of course probably 4 or 5-dimensional view I need of my life. Yeah. So then I get to see, okay, here's what is actually happening in its full complexity. And so what I'm going to read to you isn't a translation, but it involves translations as they arise inside of the daybook process. Of course, I have to excerpt it, but this is an excerpt from the December one. And it is also, in some sense, there is a kind of relationship that I will maybe refer to when I give the talk about publication, because for a while now I've been publishing by doing what I'm doing now. That is, I've been treating the reading as the publication, which allows me to get a lot more work out. It also makes the event singular, which I hope is, for some of you at least, feels special. So there's 2 things that are being translated here, and because they're in the flow, I'm just going to say up front to give some credit to the names. It's 2 Cuban poets I've been working with recently, José Lezama Lima and Lorenzo Garcia Vega. I'd love to talk in more detail about them, but I'm not going to. But let me just say, just to give you an image, Lezama Lima lived in Cuba and only left Cuba once. Lorenzo Garcia Vega was his younger friend and was in exile and kept leaving, kept moving, kept straying. So I've been interested in these 2 poles of the person that stays in the exile. Okay, so part 1, called Capes. Después de muerto Orfeo, su cabeza es arrancada del cuerpo y lanzada a un río, donde continúa cantando, hasta que otras divinidades hostiles deciden ocultarlo por el fuego. Or, once Orpheus is dead, his head's torn from the body, thrown into a river, but it keeps on singing until other hostile divinities decide to hide it in the fire. 1 December, solarium. As I sat, I ran through my thoughts. Sometimes I wish I didn't, and the effect was stillness or a blank. I try to summon the blank sometimes with an image, memory of Rainier's summit from last week, dim light show, play of eyelids and pulse. I think these would be, maybe sometimes are, replaced, but how would that work? By a blank, like a last single thing focused on before the blank, like a countdown that ends in 0. As I sat, though, I did arrive in passing at this maybe simple insight, to wit, grind white, lean, loose, dwell, stay, wild, shape, fine, night, hour, trip, sack, part, left, wool. Unprepared. Look, the old world behind you. Un año. Start there. The recipe left behind. Book, dictionary falls open. I said what I had to say in time. So we corroborated, collapsing the boxes, not the preferences, not the categories. It was Thursday, 5 December, solarium. Hay que experimentar al azar, dice Bacon, provocando una causalidad no esperada. You have to experience chance, says Bacon, provoking an unexpected causality, receiving the surprise of causality, recibiendo la sorpresa de la causalidad. No obstante, el sortilegio, aquí también irritado, quisiera ir contra la causalidad, al menos la de nexos visibles, sucesivos. A tree in the desert is less surprising than the man in the slums covering himself with a newspaper. People accept everything unless it's a surprise, amazing, a monster throwing questions without answers. Un monstruo que lanza preguntas sin respuestas, se asombra del incondicionado de la divinidad, pero se niega a aceptar que él es un incondicionado igualmente asombroso. He refuses to accept that he himself is an equally amazing, unconditioned flood of white light, details of dirty, ugly, sitting, city unveiled, dream journals, I accept, or these clever Cuban essays, what is Monday or Sunday to you then? 4. The pen scratches, the music's choral, all agree. At night they post on crime. Well, there's two kinds. One is an almost crime, described in its potential, then filled in imaginatively. The other is moral, hand wringing. I mean, crisis of a crisis-ridden way of life. We say street, but it means woods. And in many places, both are dirty, dirty streets, dirty woods, dirty, ugly city as winter draws near, thinking of rain to wash it all away. So dramatic. I merely mean to clean things up a bit, the unsightly part, but cities are this way, and we're moving to another, still preparing my odd Sunday thoughts, solarium, 8 December. Idea of a novel or travelogue. Someone walks through countryside in late fall, early winter, ground is wet, sometimes muddy, tall grasses bear dew, mist and fog at times, lit up or pierced by flashes of sun, so dynamic to a degree, but not too windy, breezy, yes, and maybe near water or coast, rocky, and what is happening as someone walks, memory, thinking or reflecting on family affairs, on reading and writings. It's a mind place for me, fantasy, where I write, go to write, to see what's around the turn. Do I grasp something of the landscape by walk, run? Could glycine dreams bleed into consciousness? The dice cup, a cup wrapped in, made of leather. Argentine byproduct, intervention of bluish dim light. Applause, old object, odd object, like a small shaving mirrors. One of the few things I've retained from elders, abuelos, should be rubbed with oil on the inside at least. Los textos que se pueden desmontar, textos llenos de alusiones, llenos de cargas culturales, llenos de citas que hay que descifrar, texts that can be dismantled, texts full of allusions, full of cultural baggage, full of quotes you have to decipher. Texts that can be made into like objects for dismantling, into like little boxes capable of being dismantled in their components. Texts that can be read as if they were themselves something objective. Ejemplo, un soneto de Petrarca. Example, a sonnet by Petrarch. Phase part 2. A few more sips, the stretching credibility session right before sunset. A dark day, the modular, modifiable, long sentence. Soy un quietista a quien el quietismo lo mantiene en el no quietismo, en la intranquilidad y la jodedera. See how many more lines there are. Yes, to scribble before dinner and other rewards of time and habit, it was a flexibility session, which merits saying since it's not being repeated after all, a little mobile spot for Spanish, for poetry, for novels, for in and out, games to play with books, ideas behind books, appreciation and skepticism as to capture of conversation, simulated friends versus narrowcast that meets your needs in the most recent audio form. But you can also have lectures. You will one day, terrible or bright thought, also be captured in that medium. And still 20, still December, again, solarium. And did I finish? The same incense lit over and over with a candle as the sun set. As I move this pile of papers around, sometimes I skip a line, mind wandering, Metzinger, what gets written this way. I did cultivate kitchen time, so close to solstice, sauerkraut, choco pudding, chai, almond milk, baba, ganoush. Yes, to 26. And to a cautious return, tracing the letters in the air in my mind, wandered a few steps past long habitual walks, and then llamas, or alpacas, and then a temple, and more subtle marvels. East Olympia, unmapped afternoon, almost New Year's walk, a place to resolve riding trees knocked over by wind, trees in pots, and a giant red cedar. She called it bonsai. Like, name what's here. Dormitorium, Vladimir's painting, red bird, dark green curtain, scrap of fabric from an old blanket. Greet these little clouds. Finally, what is there to say? Describe this 28th and December. As I pulled out the first half in envelope, I was greeted by the phrase, important days. And have they been? I asked myself, have I acted accordingly, or is it just a helpful phrase? Would apply to more or less any span, and what matters to say so, to write it. Think of the future editor. It's me. We did go to Seattle yesterday, a little parade of emotions, but the meal and conversation were good. And now I remember I spoke of the birds. I should think of them today, that last bit of seed, but also of what these sheets are, a genre, intimate perhaps, though still no shit or cum, no confessional, intime, etc. Did read Strachey's Aubrey with unusual pleasure in bed last night, and did dream still awake of the genre. 30 December dream. So I'm arriving at a party, my party. Imagine myself like a boxer approaching the ring. There's people there dancing, stomping. It's some kind of loft, bare brick walls, wood floors. As I make my way to the center, I dance in an increasingly flashy way. Having arrived, I flip over. My pinky's bleeding a little. I notice as I dance in handstand, maybe my nose is a little congested or some blood there too. I'm in a good mood. When I open my eyes again, there are offerings, some kind of magnetic toy, sculpture, and pills, a box of large cream yellow pasticules that a friend Friendly West Coast girl, knowledgeable about designer drugs, feeds me with a strange set of tongs or ice cream scoop. Mentioning some guru, she says, it's his final Zen experience before death. As though the pill held or was a recording. It's mellow, right? I ask, a bit worried since I'm already intoxicated. I don't think so. Or something like that was the answer as she fed me my second. Thanks for listening.